So we're going to get started with Danny Hauben's presentation. I don't think I need to introduce Danny Hauben, judging by the size of the crowd we have here tonight, but I am willing to bet that he's the most prolific landscape artist in the history of this neighborhood. So Danny seems to think that he won't need this mic, so we'll let him test that out.
All right, I'll take it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, welcome. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Nick Dembrowski and Tom Carey, Peter Ostrander. I really appreciate this invitation, and just a couple of quick disclaimers. Some of these images I dredged out of vaults, and so the earlier the work, the crappier the quality, but we will just bear with me. And no, I think I can see it. It's this one, right? Okay, so that's me and my father. So I moved to Kingsbridge when I was 9 years old in 1965. And before that, I grew up in the the very northeast corner of the Bronx, like Boston Road, Eastchester Road, a complex called Hillside Homes. So that's from a photograph of me and my father. So I just wanted to give you a sense. So in Hillside, we lived in a second-story apartment of a four-story building, which my cousin Barbara will recall because she's here and she had the same experience. And growing up in this pretty cool area, but we didn't have views, spectacular views. So you could imagine at age 9 having this terrace on this hill on Fort Independence Street. Of course, several of you here today have been in this apartment and seen this view. And so we are looking right west across, so in where the greenery is in the center is the Major Deacon and then Broadway, and then you could see directly straight to the Century Building. You could see Whitehall, so you have some orientation. Wait, wrong direction. Wait a minute. Okay. Wait, no, that's so different. Okay, this way. No. Okay. No. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to keep my finger on the button. So, no, that's okay. No, better without. So, this is the first cityscape. Well, actually, just go back one. Kenny, you're here. Oh my God. I made it all the way from Forest Hill. My first cityscape, my parents indulged me and let me paint a mural on the wall of my bedroom in Hillside. We don't, unfortunately, have no photographs of that. And my friends and I would, there were two beds. I shared the room with my brother Eddie. Two beds came out from the wall that the mural was on, and it was a city image, and my friends and I would don towels and jump from bed to bed pretending we were Superman. So, okay, now we are fast forward, so now I'm 15 years old, and most of my art was done in my blank book with the black cover, and this is a magic marker of the view, and you will see some recognizable things that will repeat in many of these images. The House of Pancakes features prominently. Why? Because number one, it's a nice color, and number two, it's a different shape also. This is now Staples. It used to be wall mounts for those of you. You know, everything I paint becomes a historical document because as soon as I paint it, it becomes something else. So anyway, this is the Century building that apparently is being built. It's got, so that's historical. That's got like cranes on the roof there, amazingly enough, I just discovered. So, and then when I was, 19, my brother extracted me from my plight as a, working the night shift at the Bronx General Post Office. And I moved up to Boston, and what did I wind up painting in Boston was my, that view. And this piece was based on that magic marker drawing. So I'm living in Boston. This is a 6-foot painting, my first large piece. House of Pancakes, the sort of some kind of rendition of the Century building. I didn't put I should have written wallpaper, but I didn't. And so this is a large oil, and my memory, if it serves me, I was still working on it. I lived in the Boston area for 5 years. I went to the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, and then I thought I was going to be a street painter in the French Quarter of New Orleans, but that didn't come to be. I wound up back in the Bronx with my parents, the same apartment, and I think I finished this painting in that apartment with the view for reference. When I, at that time, was enrolled at the School of Visual Arts. This again, I zeroed in to the center section of that previous painting and did this, which is even larger than the previous painting of just this center section. Again, House of Pancakes. And this was the centerpiece of they made the poster for my solo show at the Bronx Museum in 1988 or 89. And this was bought by 9X. Who knows where it is now, because 9X isn't. Anyway, you get a sense that my affinity for the geometry of the city. So I did all kinds of versions of that, based on that same motif. Again, this is, I kind of created like a scratch board approach of painting black over white and then scratching through, and this is like a night version of that, same scene. So now we're gonna progress both thematically and chronologically. So we're kind of jumping back and forth. But before doing oils, and after doing magic markers, I was doing pastels. And so I'm going to show a bunch of these, and you'll notice that they all are views from above. They are, window scenes mostly from our window. And these were done, I want to say, roughly in the, keep going, Judy says keep going. A lot of pictures. So the same view, the House of Pancakes, whatever. This is a gouache, I believe. But, so different. I return to the same theme again and again. Sunset, pastel, quick piece. We got great sunsets from there. I'm an experimenter, so I always love trying, different materials, different, ideas behind each piece, even though the subject. So now you'll see the introduction of the old Kelton ice skating rink, which is going to appear until the dreaded Cube Smart showed up. Bowman's in between, but it was still the same building. So again, nighttime, daytime, views, the moon over Riverdale. Yeah. So that's looking more north. We also have the view north. So actually what you're seeing here is the 242nd Street train yards, train station. Van Cortlandt Park would be the darkest part of the picture. So we had quite an array of views, and it was fun to come across. You could see the faintest bit of Manhattan College up there, the steeple. That was Pastel. Yeah. Want to look at that again? Find the right button. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Pastel. So for all my Pastel students who are here today, start with a tone. So here's looking Waldo building. Look, the steps going up to 38th Street steps. So these are pretty early. Okay, Robert, you recognize this. This proud owner's got this in his living. Anybody who wants to see this early large thing, you gotta see Robert Pastels over there. He's got it hanging in his living room. Again, this is a pastel. So in the distance, George Washington Bridge, the Broadway Bridge, drawbridge. This is called Bend in the Tracks, looking across to Inwood. Inwood Park. Large painting, large oil. Early oil. So these big early oils were done from photograph. This one and the 231st Street station that you just saw. I tried to learn how to paint, by having these geometric shapes to try to control the edges or whatever. Okay, we're going back again to from Ewan Park. The view of the church there, looking down to 30, so we're looking east down to 231st Street. Okay. And then from this piece, I did this painting, early painting. So these early pieces were from, I want to say, the mid-'80s. This is mid-'80s. And this one's still available. Quirky piece. So again, Pastels, our block on 4th Independence Street, looking down to Bailey. Winter scene. Bill's old building. Pastel. This is on like a Japanese paper, so there's like a softness. You see the kind of quality pastels can have on different kinds of surfaces. So Barbara, you've seen this one in Vivian's house. My cousin has this one out in Berkeley, California. Looking towards the Van Cortlandt Park. This is where, Fort Independence, if people know that part of Kingsbridge, you go down and Fort Independence becomes 238th Street as you head west. And the reservoir, the amalgamated buildings that show the Lechem roofs here. The VA hospital. This one has a faint image of the World Trade Centers.
Pastel.
That's an oil, that was an oil. That's an oil. What's that? What's the round thing? That could be the Bronx Community College thing. Yeah, I mean, I started, you know, after a while, I started taking more liberties with, so, you know, for you tech, you know, people, left brain people, you have to, you know, cut me some slack. This is called Still Life with Bronx. I should call it Still Life with House of Pancakes. This is a pretty early self-portrait in my studio at the time. That's my pet parrot, Chumpy. If you see his head, used to turn around. But, you know, check out, I mean, things that date you, you know, the telephone, and my Dremel tool, and, you know, all the things, and that's one of my, I did this series called Black Windows, paintings that were inspired by, you know, taking the number 4 train down, you know, through the South Bronx in the late 70s and 80s. I'm not including those because they're not technically Kingsbridge. They don't represent Kingsbridge and Riverdale. So that was charcoal, yes. This is called Skeleton in My Closet. This is from the back of my studio. So I've had my studio on 247th Street in Henry Hudson for a little more than 30 years. At one point, it just looks a lot neater than it subsequently became. But also now we're going back again early, very early scene of the not High Bridge. Henry Hudson Bridge. There's the split we were talking about earlier, the train goes through. So we've started to come down to street level. So, you know, when I started to feel more confident, I took my gear out and found locations around the neighborhood. So we're starting to see that. This was on Cannon Place. Pastels, mostly because pastels are very quick and efficient ways of working. You don't have to, you know, mix paints in advance. The cleanup time is a lot quicker. Cannon Place. So now we're up by Colin Avenue, Amalgamated. I gotta get a lozenge. Trudy, press the buttons for me. Keep this moving, pressing this button. So Bailey Avenue, these are small pieces. I'll press the buttons, Judy's unwrapping the lozenge. Welcome back. Okay, and Cortland Park South, okay. So we're looking west, that, you know, towards that, you know, Amalgamated on the right. So starting in the middle of 3rd grade, I went to PS 95, which would be right on your legal society. Yeah, fun. Also the same area. Yeah, roof garden, above the garage. So this is right on my street. Superette. I'll tell a story too. So I did a small version of this one, and the proprietor of the Superette bought it. And he put it up small, he put it up in the store for people to see. So my friend Peter came to visit, and he went down the block to buy beer at the Superette, and the proprietor saw Peter looking at my pastel, and the guy's like, "Oh, you like that painting?" And he said, "Yeah, that's really great." And the guy said, "My son did it." Right. G-Town. So Furman's used to be where, yeah, very funny. They used to have this thing up here. Look at that. Used to be a great store, overpass over the, on the other side of the Deegan there, between the Deegan and Broadway was a family-run store called Furman's. That was cool. Oh, so this was from a photograph. The pastels called Motley Crew, and David Schwartz, Alex Carrera, Mark Dunn, and me. So I did it a couple of years later. The photograph so that must have been 69, maybe. A little study. Sometimes I even would work from in the car and attach the board to my steering wheel. This is called Man Under Car. And actually gave this to our mechanic after more than 25 years of service. So there's a date there, 1992. I did that, and then here's a bronze version. I did a couple of bronzes. This is cool. It looks good that size, but it's actually, 10 inches.
Is that painting or something?
No, it's cast. So I did it with plaster, and then I took it to a foundry, and they made a mold, a rubber mold, and it's called the lost wax technique. They make a mold, which is the negative, then they pour in the wax, and then that's the positive, and they encase it in plaster, and then they pour in, like a hole with a funnel, and you pour in the bronze, and it melts the wax, and it becomes a pure piece. No, it's a patina, so then when the bronze is done, you put some kind of chemical on it, a blowtorch, and you can control to some extent the kind of coloration of it. Now the only differentiation you're seeing is the light hitting the texture of it. So luckily I woke up on, I think it was Tuesday morning at 4:30, realizing I hadn't put any people in this presentation. So I'm going to show a bunch of people. So this is a guy named Ernesto, who was he was right on Bailey Place. He lived there, became friends. He posed for me, and then he moved back to the Caribbean somewhere. Yeah, and I gave him this portrait. This is a guy named Louis, who is a bit of a fixture on our block. I've painted him a couple of times. So also, just generously offering to, I think I paid him in beers, actually. So, became more animated as the sitting went, but got his kind of features. This is also him. So I think we're still in that. Aaron Olshan, some of you may know. There's a painting I did of him. You know, I think he must have still been in high school, junior high school. We were in high school, junior high school, and school of music and art together. His father, Ernie, was a wonderful painter and inaugurated it. So this is blurry, but I was approached in my building by one of our sleep reporters, and he said, would you like to paint a mural in our lobby? And I said, sure, can you find me a studio space in the building? And he said, well, let's find out. So then the president of the board at the time approached me and said, we'll give you a space. So I went up to the people who lived on the top floor of our building, and they had this view that looked over this other building that's the Bailey Avenue building, I forget what it's called. And so that's the view from the highest point of our building. That's the Roberto Clemente building, 207th Street Bridge, right? You know, and Manhattan skyline. So this is the mural I did. So it's 8 feet by 12 feet, still resides in that very lobby. And I painted it in the lobby, so I projected the slide of the original piece onto the panels. There's three plywood panels, and I projected it right there in the lobby, so people in the building got to see it, you know, being created. They would go to work in the morning, come back and check out what they could see, you know, progress. It was very cool.
How long did it take?
Good question. I can't remember, probably, maybe I worked on it over a couple of weeks. Bill, were you around when I was doing that mural? Did we know each other in 1990? We didn't know each other yet. Okay, so this is kind of a rendering of the neighborhood with, also taking liberties, but using, I became so familiar with all of our key shapes and structures. Of course, the House of Pancakes. The Broadway Bridge is a thing. So I think this was also, so I started commandeering different people's terraces. So somebody who was facing northwest, so again, the train yards, the Manhattan College, the field on, they call it Park Field. Here's the seats of the, no, Canning Park is over here, but this is where the whatever it is. Field in Vancouver. And this is the 242nd Street station. Okay, there's my button. And also from high up, again. So you get the idea. And zooming in on Manhattan College. I think this vantage point was from, we used to sneak into the golf course from, through the fence, and there's some great views. If you look straight west from there, you can see Manhattan College. Another one, Pastels. And okay, so then I got better, and this was a large view again from our terrace, and pastel, and then I decided to do what was at the time my largest piece from painting, which is this one, which is currently on loan to our state senator, Gustavo Rivera. It's up in his office in the State House. Apparently, I'll get it back at some point. 231st Street, Coal Mine Donut. And different renditions, different variations, playing with colors, shapes, materials, whatever. Another one, painting at night on the street.
Wow.
Well. So a lot of scenes of 231st Street, Broadway, this is the neighborhood. Bailey, this is back to Bailey. This is right in front of our building. And the kids would pose, It's called Watching Little League. This is the Little League field on Bailey. 233rd Street in Bailey. So that's our building is up this Bailey Place, goes up to Fort Independence, and our building is right up here. It's gotta be good out. So now we're back in Van Cortlandt Park, amalgamated. Barbara has this one. But then there's more. This one doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. Painted over, a moment of impulse. Usually I'm pretty good at containing myself. Once in a while, things go away. Pastel, charcoal. Now we're in Pigeon Park, or otherwise known as Fort Independence Park, or something right by the reservoir. So I've done many of these, all kinds. Oh, we have this one too? This is back in, also in, looking as you go up, heading east on, towards Clinton High School, towards, that's Cedric Avenue down there, so it's still in Pigeon Park. That's me and my fans, my peeps. So that's, looking back, looking west now, across the, so the reservoir will be on your left. That's my mother. She wasn't tall. I kind of made her lanky looking, unfortunately. She was short. But she was a hell of a lot. So this is looking down at the Bailey playground and close up. This is actually, I put a layer of silver leaf on the board that I was painting, and then because of all the shininess of I think it was after after the rain and the sun came out, or ice, I don't know if it's ice, but there was a lot of shiny business, so I painted on top of silver leaf, just to see what would happen. So now we're up on unfortunately, one doesn't often get up on roofs anymore. but I did get up on the Shelmaleka roof. I did this pastel, that became this oil, and that became one of my Bronx Community College paintings. So some of you may know I did a 22 painting commission for the new library at Bronx Community College. 20 of the paintings were this funny shape, 1.5 feet high by 5 feet across. So I had to take sections. Luckily, Judy was with me to make a cutout of the scale outline that I could superimpose on top of my earlier pieces and extract sections of them that would become these paintings. So these were done from photographs. These were from photographs taken from High Point in the towers, amalgamated towers looking west again. And these are also panels at the Bronx Community College library. And we're going to have a trip. What's the date? The 12th of July from the Y. We're doing a trip. So if you Y people get the calendar, I'm going to take a group to the Bronx Community College to see these paintings. 22. They're permanently installed. So this is another one. These were like these were the most fun to do because I just like dashed them off. I had put so much detail in all the earlier ones. This is our cat canvas. So we lived, Judy and I lived in a different apartment in our building. We faced east and north, and our cat would delight in giving us little mini heart attacks by taking a running dash through the apartment, shoot up the side of the thing, and catch himself. We were 9 stories up. So I also commemorated him with this piece, which is at Bronx Community College as well. I was a little kitten.
I'll live to be 19.
Yeah, he never fell. He was a character. So, what's the name of that building on Corlear Avenue? Anyway, my friend Jay Miller gave me contact with his son who lived in this apartment at a terrace, looking at, of course, we're heading south, Kennedy High School, and again, the Harlem River, Marble Hill. Corlear Garden, a tall building with the metal things. Yep. Okay, Corlear Garden, thank you. So that was the view. So I did it in 4 panels. So here we could see the Fordham Hill, Veterans Hospital, maybe a little bit of Bronx Community College, but anyway, yeah. So that was one of my first. So this is one of the panels, one of the 4 canvases that made up that previous piece. Again, you'll see these same, things, from one side, from the other, the 207th Street Bridge, whatever these bridges. This is the High Bridge Tower there. For all you people, students in our area. Okay, elephant under the L. So that's something I actually saw. I was reading a book about the plight of elephants, and one of them got to Broadway 31st. So this is the name I call it 99 cent. So my mother came down. I put her in, but unfortunately I didn't like it, so I took her out. Very mild. Pastel. Yeah, there I am. Oh, Howard! Hey! we don't know this person. Howard's there. Howard's here. Howard's there. That's me working on this thing. Down Bailey Place. And so, often people coming by would, ask what I was up to. I'd say, well, I could use somebody to sit on that bench, and if they, once in a while, they would oblige. Same view. This is the one that Bronx Museum auction. Domino on Bailey at night. This was one of the times when it got just a wee bit hairy being out there at night, because for some reason some guy got into his head that I was like an undercover cop. Very elaborate ruse. Bailey Playground. Handball courts. I did a whole series of these. Unfortunately, most of them were not focused enough to keep the. That was fun. I spent a whole summer doing handball pieces. I got a call from a guy who was working with Marble Hill organization of people from Marble Hill. Anyway, they were doing a barbecue thing, event, and he invited me to come down and just do a pop-up painting. So I did this piece right by the so that all this was going on, and I'm doing my thing. So it's loose, but sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's okay. Okay, so there's going to be a series of the, Ben, Harlem River Bend, I call them. There's a whole series of these. So now we're up Bailey, further south, up, and it goes uphill, and you have this view. This is a charcoal that I did large. It's one of my bigger charcoals. I think it's like 5 feet or something. So looking back, north, back up towards Kingsbridge, Riverdale on the left. This was, another one, 2002. And now we're in the Target parking lot looking south. One of our great views. Unfortunately, of course, Target has no windows facing this extraordinary, unique neighborhood view, but I have done many versions of it. Now we're back on along looking down Deegan, and here's Bronx Community College. So right next to this building is the new library where my paintings are on permanent display, 22 paintings. So now I'm going to walk you quickly through the process. So I did this while I was doing the commission for Bronx Community College. So this was going to be a 2-panel painting. I put a tone on the panels. Then I am projecting an image of a painting that maybe one of the paintings I just showed you, onto the tone, and while the tone is wet, I'm using a rag to pull out the light. And in a day, I can pull out the whole image. This is what it looked like when the projection is on it. And here's what it looked like after the first day. And now we're going to zoom into one section. So that's the Gould Memorial Library up there. I know it's not Kingsbridge, sorry, but close, anyway, nearby. And so this is the evolution of a painting. And then that's part of that, and that is part of that. And that's one of the, that's thank you. And so this is 2 of the 20 panels that surround the information commons, the main reading area. There's a balcony, and then on the base of the balcony is a frieze, and along those friezes are 20 of these long skinny paintings. Back to the Target parking lot. You know, even though they have no windows, but the people are very nice there, and never had a problem setting up painting from the parking lot. There I am. Oops, sorry, that was too fast. Anyway, it's right. Oh, there I am. So this would have been probably 2011 or something. 2011, something like that. So this is the painting I also did from there, which became one of the 2 10-foot stairwell paintings in the library. And this is the big one. This is 10 feet. So, you know, you guys can go see these. You've got to contact the school and get in, and they're going to always be there. This is the building they're in over here. And they didn't, it wasn't built. They were building the building while I was painting these. So they gave me their architect's rendering of the building that I used to put that in the painting. Good. I call this series Looking into the Sun. So available. Kingsbridge. Different variations. That's my story now. Way to go, eat, go. Back to Broadway. This is called SpongeBob on Broadway. This is called Monet on Broadway. He wasn't really. This is it's called Off Track. That's a big thing. Well, that's a big oil. Also, 6 foot. Really. Yes, I had some. I was teaching down at Bronx Regional High School in the South Bronx. I had some of my students. One of my students posed for me, not on location, but I wanted that pose. My friend Joaquin, Liz. Same place. This is like a 4 by 6 inch oil, quick oil. But it's, you know, I wanted to include, you know, some of these studies, sketches, you know, whatever, just to give a different. This is a oil relief. I call it sculpted oil or oil relief. I've done a lot of work building up the surface, trying to, you know, funkify self-portrait. Some point around 95. Strapping young man. Howard's view. Before, so Howard was moving into this Park Reservoir apartment, and he hadn't moved in yet, which was perfect. So I could go in, and thank you, Howard, for allowing me to go in and paint this scene. Yeah, I did this one, and there I am. So this is another, it's canvas, again, the cat. Again, represented, this is one of the panels that's up in Bronx Community College. When the committee came to the studio and saw I was starting to put people in the paintings that were gonna be in the library, they said, "Where are you?" So I took that as a green light to put myself as the largest figure front and center, and to bring canvas back as my muse. Yeah. Yeah. Right, that's Howard's view of me looking at Howard's view. Right. And this is Howard's other view, looking towards Clinton High School, the tower up east along Cedric Avenue. Cool views. Here back in just got mixed up, but this is back in Bailey Park playground. This is somebody pretending to paint my painting. 25th Street, sorry, trigger finger. 25th Street, Broadway. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. 225th Street also. That's me. Working on that painting. This is a large painting on the bridge, looking back towards the Marble Hill. This guy got this guy to pose for me, which I paid him, which was cool. Just a random guy. Also, you. Is that Alicia?
Yeah.
Oh, I recognize your voice.
It's not in there.
So so I could put in a plug now that a bunch of my students are here. I'm teaching here in Riverdale at the Riverdale Y on Tuesdays from 10 to 12. I give have a painting class, and I give a lecture on different artists every week for an hour. And then I teach at RSS in the Century Building, Riverdale Senior Services on Wednesdays from 10 to 12.
Wonderful class.
Wonderful. Yeah, so lovely students. So at the Riverdale Riverfest, I met a guy named Jason Lewitz, who was living up in a penthouse apartment in Amalgamated. He invited me to come up and paint, and this was the piece I did from there. A little electric color, but you get the idea. So that's more recent. That's one of the more recent pieces. It's a large piece for being up on a roof and the wind blowing and all of that. But anyway, this is down to this is one of our. So we also make prints of our work, and this is probably the biggest seller. Yeah, down 230. What's it called? 238th Street Steps. So this is called Up Riverdale Steps. And then this was started out being Down Riverdale Steps. Now it's called Urban Acadia. I stole this guy from Winslow Homer. Okay, so early Wave Hill. I haven't painted there in a long time. I had a show at Wave Hill, not in the Glinder Gallery, but in the main building a long time ago. Also Wave Hill, Pastels. Yeah, these are pastels. This is oil 256th Street construction. So when you come in down from the Y before you turn on Riverdale Avenue, that's they would do something. I used to like construction. This was Margaret and the motorcycle in front of my studio on 247th Street. And then for a while they were digging up in front of my studio, so this is what it looked like. And one day I went out to paint, I drove around and realized that I should go back and paint what was going on in front of my studio. Yeah, can you imagine what they wrote? They put in a whole new electric thing. So this is also, so that was looking towards my door, and this is looking from my door. Some guy's head just sticking out of the
You pay them, you pay.
I didn't think of that. Here they are, again, just a study, charcoal study, quick. So for my charcoal and pastel students, I keep saying how loose and light
Yeah,
is my motto.
and quick.
Quick, and just to keep the eraser handy. This was, Anthony, remember the first time you invited me to Riverfest? So yeah, that's the piece that I did at Riverfest the first time. I forget your booth was right next to somewhere around there. Representing mainland media and the beer hall, or was that before the beer hall? Before the beer hall. So, so that was fun, and then I went back and did this one another year, and then they hired me to curate, and I brought in a bunch of cool artists to show there. This was another year I did. During by this point, I was just like, let me hide under a tree somewhere. Then I had a show at the Hebrew Home for the Aged, and then they hired me to do they commissioned me to do, and they wheeled out some folks. And they were my models, and I forget, it was somebody donated a lot of money, and they did it. Oh, there you go. Thank you. There you go, Joe and Sanford. Well, obviously they were going to give them this paper. This is the novel in the house right over. Used to be Ellie Hauben was a turn of the century amazing American sculptor who lived in this building. It's right down the block from my studio. And his Ellie Hauben's son came to my open studio that year when I had this there. From the park, Riverdale Park. Somebody observing. And a couple of Hudson River pieces. I've done quite a number of these. Little ones, big one. This one was done during the Riverfest one year. Yeah, that was fun. So you came by, Susan, when I was working. Is that Susan? Yeah, I like this one. Fishing the Hudson, I did a series of these. We had to walk across the tracks to get over there. And then I wanted to include some interior. This was our apartment up on the other side of the building. There, this was, we just came back from our honeymoon in South India, and it was a lot of snow coming down. This is some of the textiles we brought back to this. Our taxes were waiting to be done. This is my biggest piece to date. It's still sitting in my studio. If anybody has any connections with any places that have large walls and people who have large wallets or whatever, size of 21 feet across. It's 10 panels, 7 feet tall at the center, and so that's our view, once again, how to communicate. Started out as one panel, and I had this lovely young woman, Christina Bulko, sharing my studio. When she left 7 pre-stretched panels. And so I did one, which was going to be a self-portrait, with a mirror. I put the mirror out on the terrace. And it was going to be vertical after having just completed all those horizontals for Bronx Community College. And then what happens? The biggest horizontal ever. So this was up in the lobby of the Bronx Museum for 6 or 8 months, which was cool. That's when I realized I needed to put the top on it. So I showed it twice. I showed it at Andrew Friedman home. I had my show there. And there was only 5 panels, then 7 panels at the Bronx Museum, but it's never been shown in its full thing. Here I am working on it. Pardon the glare on my head. This is a close-up of the one panel. And I have to say this is Judy and Heather. And then a close-up. I think this is an earlier version of the self-portrait. The eyes are too big. They're like keen I fixed it. Anyway. So I've also done quite a number of portraits, and I realized that they were done here. This is our borough historian, Lloyd Olton, borough historian emeritus, I guess, now. And he sat in front of my studio for me, wonderful man, 2018. And I did the man who was to become the current borough historian. He who shall not be named, Edgehill Hernandez, and other friends in the neighborhood. I knew Andre Trenier, wonderful Bronx artist. And that's an usher who shared my studio for a few years. Alan Shapiro, Sandy Ehrlich, who was my boss originally when I first got hired at Y. Challenging when people smile at teeth, I just have to say. Teeth are challenging. Cinnamon Willis, my sister. Andrew Scott, used to run the Bronx Council in New York. This man was out with my student, Stanley Yeamans. He was my student for 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my joke, my running joke was I thought you were old when we started. Oh no. Oh well, sorry, Rochelle. Katori is here with us. Beautiful friend. And my mother. And my mother again, looking out our window. And finally, a little view of the Hudson River. Thank you.